If you're a people pleaser, you're usually very concerned with making sure that everybody around you feels happy and comfortable, even if it means that you're not. So if you consider yourself to be a people pleaser, you probably know deep down that it's not a good thing, but at the same time, you might feel like it's a nice thing. You're looking after other people. You're making sure that everybody else feels happy. But if you're not careful, all of that giving to other people and not prioritizing your own needs, preferences, ideas, opinions can cause you to feel stressed out. It can cause you to feel resentful, which then starts to erode your relationships. It depletes your energy and it takes away from your own goals and your own priorities. It's really important that we get a handle on this, and that is what I'm here to help you to do. I'm Dunn. I'm a clinical and coaching psychologist and mindfulness meditation teacher, host of the Crappy to Happy podcast, which has been downloaded millions of times, and author of the Crappy to Happy books. And I am here to help you to overcome the blocks that get in the way of you living your happiest and most meaningful life. I'm so glad you're here. Please do give me a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell to make sure that you get notified whenever I post a new video, which happens to be every single Tuesday. So let's get straight to this topic of people pleasing. First of all, I think it's really important to understand what is actually driving this behavior. Because often there is a basis of kindness, of generosity, of wanting to be considerate and thoughtful and making sure other people are happy. But there's also an element of not wanting to be considered lazy or rude or inconsiderate or unkind. Maybe some fear of disapproval, of judgment, a fear of conflict. You don't want to upset other people. You don't want to look bad in the eyes of somebody else. You don't want to hurt other people's feelings. You don't want people to disapprove of you. You don't want people to judge you or criticize you. And so therefore you say yes when you really mean no. You agree to things that you don't necessarily deep down agree with. At some level, there is this mistaken belief that if you prioritize your own needs, values, opinions, preferences, ideas, that's being inconsiderate or rude or thoughtless to somebody else. I think rationally we know that can't be true, but at some level we kind of act as if that is true. Or we kind of act as if we're not worth, or our needs aren't as valid, or our opinions aren't as valid as somebody else's. So it can be worth having a think about, well, where might you have picked up that message? Was it modeled to you when you were younger? In your earlier years, did you have to behave in a particular way, or did you have to keep people happy in order to receive love and approval or validation from others? Were you told directly that your needs don't matter, that your opinion doesn't count for anything? All of our early experiences lead to our later behavior. So if you have a pattern that is playing out in your life and you know that deep down it's not serving you, it can be helpful to just have a think about, well, where might that have come from? And it's not that we have to go back and dredge up our whole personal history, but if you have some understanding on a logical level of how this pattern or how this belief came to be, it can really be the catalyst for helping you to shift that, to challenge that thinking, which is ultimately driving this people-pleasing behavior. So if that resonates with you, maybe give me a like, leave a comment below if you realize that there has been past experiences that have instilled in you some sense that your needs don't matter, that you have to behave in a particular way to get approval, that your opinions or your ideas aren't relevant, or whatever the case may be. So while you're doing this exploration, I think the other thing to pay attention to is whereabouts in your life do you find that you most commonly fall into this trap of people pleasing? Is it in your workplace that you always say yes, pick up the slack, cover up for other people, take on extra responsibilities? Is it in your family, or is there some dynamic going on there in your family that you're the one who wants to keep everybody around you happy? Is it in your friendship group? Or is it really across the board? I think it's important to start to really be specific about where does this behavior start to show up, because sometimes our minds are very generalist. Oh, I'm a people pleaser. Oh, I always do this. Oh, I never do that. But sometimes we can actually narrow down specific situations or even specific people, individuals who bring out this behavior in us. And when you start to look at what is the dynamic that's going on there, that can also to help you to uncover what's driving it so that then you can start to change it. Regardless of where this behavior shows up, I think the first and the most important thing is to buy yourself some time. If somebody asks you to do something, makes a request of you, and you know that your instinct is to say, oh yeah, sure, that sounds great, and then you worry about how am I going to get out of this, I never wanted to do that, and you find yourself in that whole awkward situation, before you even say yes, buy yourself some time. Oh, that sounds great, I'll have to check my diary. I'll have to check the family calendar because I don't know what family commitments we've got. Come up with something that you can say that buys you some time. That might feel more challenging in the workplace, but oh, let me just cross-check with what other projects I've got on at the moment. Let me check what other deadlines I've got, coming up. So that before you just do that knee-jerk, automatic say yes to things when you mean no, that you can actually take a breath, step back, ask yourself, do I really want to take this on? And then you can start working on how you say no. At least you've given yourself some time and some space to come up with a response rather than automatically saying yes and then wondering how you get yourself back out of that. My next tip is one that hopefully will make it easier for you to start saying no, because I know that's uncomfortable for you, and that is to actually know what is important to you, to know what your values are, to know what your priorities are, to know what your opinion is, to know what your preferences are. Sometimes we have buried that stuff for so long that we actually lose touch with what is important to us. We're so used to just going with the flow and going along with the crowd and just being agreeable that we lose touch with who we really are and what we're really about. So I really encourage you to get back in touch with that. Start to work out what is important to you. Our values and our goals are the things that should be directing our life, but they're things that we don't always give a lot of attention to. We don't often spend a lot of time really thinking about what are the most important things to me, what are my goals, what am I working on this week, this month, this quarter, whatever it might be. Because once you're clear about that, well, then it becomes very clear that saying yes to somebody else is saying no to something that is important to you. So if you consider it from that perspective, every time you say yes, every time you give something of yourself away to another person, you are saying no, you are taking something away from yourself, from your family, from your priorities, your goals. That becomes meaningful for you when you know what those things are. So spend a little bit of time thinking about what's most important to you and use that as your benchmark. Is this more important to me? Is this somebody else's needs, somebody else's priorities, somebody else's tasks or projects or whatever it is that they want my help with or they want my time for? Is that as important to me as this other thing in my life? And it's not that we need to be completely selfish and say no to everybody and just prioritize our own needs all of the time. It is about finding that balance. It is about making a conscious choice about whether I genuinely, willingly am happy to do this or happy to participate or contribute, or I genuinely don't have an opinion, or versus I'll just go along with what somebody else wants because that will keep them happy, and that way I can make sure that people aren't thinking badly about me. They're quite different, they're quite distinct, and you'll know yourself what is driving the behavior. So then once you're clear on that, practice saying no without giving a laundry list of excuses. It feels so uncomfortable if you are not in the habit of saying no to people. You might want to go back and watch the video that I created on how to set healthy boundaries in relationships. That was a live session and there was lots of really fun interaction and conversation, so you might really get a lot out of watching that. But essentially, when it feels uncomfortable to say no, we try to minimize our discomfort by coming up with a whole big long list of excuses and justifications and over-explain why we're saying no. You don't need to do that. You can apologize, I'm sorry that's not convenient for me, I'm sorry I've got something else on, but you don't need to over-explain and over-justify. The thing is that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It is not okay to have your behavior ruled by those uncomfortable emotions. If you are always acting out of a sense of obligation or to alleviate guilt, that's not authentic. So what we need to do, and again, this is why I'm a fan of mindfulness, is we need to learn to be able to sit with that discomfort and not have those uncomfortable feelings rule our behavior, because the discomfort to you in the long run is far, far greater. When you are continually suppressing your own needs, denying your own opinions, ideas, beliefs, whatever it might be, that is far more uncomfortable in the long run. So we need to learn to tolerate some of that short-term discomfort in order to prioritize what really matters most to you. And once you have a sense of your values, hopefully then what you're able to do is to start always being able to tolerate that discomfort in the service of something that is more important. And this brings me to my final point. It's the most important, it's the hardest to hear, which is why I've left it until last. But I want you to really think about what you're doing when you're people pleasing. I want you to consider that maybe what you're really doing is sort of a form of manipulation. I know that can feel a bit confronting, but when you think about it, if you're denying your own needs, your opinions, your desires, if you're not telling the truth about what you really want to do or what you really think about something in order to gain the approval of another person, isn't that kind of manipulating them? It's not really being honest with them, and it's not really being true to yourself. It's actually being inauthentic. It's a way to avoid somebody potentially not liking you or thinking badly about you. It's doing what you think other people want you to do. It's saying what you think other people want you to say. It's not being true to yourself. It's not being authentic. And here's the thing, is the irony is that we tend to be people pleasers because we value the relationship. We want to keep everybody happy. But those relationships, if they're based on something that's completely inauthentic, well, they're not authentic relationships. You can't form deep and lasting and honest connections with people if your behavior is not authentic, if other people don't really know what you think, if they don't truly know what your opinion is or what your values are or what your priorities are. If you're just going along for the sake of keeping them happy, that's not really the basis or the foundation of an honest, genuine connection. At the end of the day, most of us prefer, and you too, I imagine, prefer to know where you stand with people. If you say to somebody, what about this? Do you want to go and do this? And they say, oh yeah, sure, that sounds great. Then you realize that actually they didn't want to do that at all. They just said that to make you happy. That doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel nice for any of us. It actually feels like we've been lied to. Unless they're a complete narcissist or a complete bully, generally that doesn't make people happy. People actually want to know where they stand, and they actually really want to know what you value and what matters to you. And in a genuine, authentic relationship, in a mutually supportive relationship, then that's usually important to both people. So they're the kind of friendships that you want to foster. If you have found this video helpful, I think that you would love my free 7-day happiness challenge. You can sign up in the link below. It's just an email from me to you every day for 7 days with a tip for how you can live a happier life. As usual, if this has been helpful, please do also leave me a comment below. I would love to hear if you've learned anything, if you've gained any insight, or if there's a particular strategy that you think will be helpful to stop that people pleasing. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of when I post a new video, give me a like, and I will see you back here next Tuesday.